üks.
Facebookis juba on ürituse all see Facebook või on Estonishing all? Okei, siis teeme praegu vastupidi, siis YouTube läheb. Ma tean,
Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to 12th event in the Estonishing Evenings series of events entitled Is Climate Change a Threat to Estonia? Just a few words about Estonishing Evenings, those of you who haven't been here before. We started about now a year and a half ago, just 4 like-minded Estonians. And why we started it, we all lived abroad at some point in our lives. And we missed sort of international events in Tallinn where people who have come here from other countries and other cultures can mingle with locals and learn more about Estonia. And on the other hand, Estonians could learn more about people who have come here from other countries. We have touched many subjects before about Estonian working culture, religion, even gender issues, diversity, Estonian-Russian community, and all the topics concerned to that. And tonight, we are talking about the environment and Estonian nature. If you're looking outside now, it doesn't look like the global warming is threatening us. But we will discuss all that tonight. My name is Silver Tamber, and I'm your host tonight here. But we have invited here 4 distinguished guests. Mattias Turovski, Mihkel Kangur, Joonas Plaan, and Grete Arro. What is different tonight is that if usually we start with one presentation and then followed by panel discussion, tonight we will have 4 short presentations. So they all will give a little presentation, about 15 minutes, talking about different topics concerned to climate change and how that will threaten Estonia, whether Estonia is having an impact on global climate change, and also what is the general situation here in Estonia concerning our nature and environment. So all those topics. You can, but basically we will do 4 presentations, then we will have a short break, and after break we'll continue with a panel discussion and Q&A session. So you can ask questions, you can also make counter arguments if you like. It's not that everyone needs to agree on everything. If you want to argue about it, this is a good chance to argue. You can also ask questions through Slido. So if you go to slido.com and then you enter, let me just get this code. All right, the event code is #4897. If you enter that code to Slido, you can ask questions from there. But obviously you can do that verbally afterwards. But I'm very glad to welcome our first presenter. And first presenter is Mattias Turovski. He will give an overview of global climate change and its causes. He is an environmental educator from Tallinn. He has given lectures on environmental ethics in the Tallinn University and Tallinn University of Applied Science. He's also a member of the animal advocacy NGO MTÜ Loomus. And currently, Mattias is carrying out an educational program via NGO Zuuzemu. I'm not sure if I said that right, but introducing live exotic insects the kindergartens and school children with the aim of acquainting them with small animals and explaining the ecological principles that govern the lives. So, Mattias, floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is on. Great. Indeed, I'm Mattias, and I'm going to give you a short presentation on climate change, but from a broader aspect. So not going into Estonia. All of the other great presenters here are going to narrow it down and focus more on Estonia. Now, let's see if this works. Okay, first problem. I don't think this slide thingy is working. Can you confirm? Thanks. I want. Oh, nice. Here we go. I hope it won't go AWOL on me. Okay, so quick overview. First, we will look at what climate change is. Leave you space to ponder what it isn't. Then a short kind of glance into the causality of climate change, and a bit more pressure maybe on the anthropogenic factor on this causality. And I will finish with a somewhat rhetorical question, or pondering on the question, whether is there any point to debate over the anthropogenic causes right now in 2019. So first of all, I would like you to look at this little word cloud that I did. So it's full of all kinds of different words and phrases. And I want you to ponder in your mind how many of these are kind of linked with climate change, and how many are not. So probably, well, this is not a random group of words. Probably you're not going to find a phrase that cannot be linked to climate change, or that is not affected by one way or another by it. And that's just the thing. When we're talking about climate change, what is climate change? It is a very, very wide and a very ambiguous term. And there's a lot of confusion over it. So most people probably would, on their first impulse, say that climate change is global warming, is stuff is getting warmer. And most people probably, when they think of it getting warmer, think of the air getting warmer. So climate change is warmer temperatures on the Earth. And indeed, most, if not all, climate authorities are in unison in claiming that indeed the Earth is getting warmer right now, and quite rapidly. But at the same time, right now in Iowa, USA, it's minus 40 degrees, or predicted to fall to around minus 40 degrees Celsius. And Donald Trump already tweeted, "Global warming, where are you? We need you. It's so cold." So it definitely has a much more complex side to it than simply stuff is getting warmer. We are seeing all kinds of freak weather occurrences intensifying, more storms, more fierce hurricanes, etc. By the way, the picture that you're seeing is of hurricanes Katia, Irma, and Jose making their way towards US border in September of 2017, about 2 months after Donald Trump decided to pull out of the Paris Agreement. So I don't know, maybe a little divine providence there, or maybe not. You be the judge. So anyway, let's kind of dismantle the question of climate change very, very quickly from maybe kind of a geo-ecological point of view. So we can't talk about climate change without talking about warming atmosphere. Indeed, it is warming. So we're seeing the temperatures over oceans and over land are increasing. The heat content of the ocean is increasing. But already with these, it becomes evident very quickly that this has an effect on other parts of the world, namely water. we can't talk about warming atmosphere without talking about changes to the water circulation of the planet. So with these changes, we're seeing more condensation in the clouds. There is much more transpiration coming from plants as we change the ecological composition of our ecosystems and land masses. And we're pumping more and more, really, of water into the system. A good example is groundwater, which is ecologically quite an inert source of water. But humans are pumping more and more out of it into the environment and kind of releasing it into the water cycle. And of course, water takes stuff along with it. So we can't really talk about the water cycle without talking about the biogeochemical cycles, those of carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, etc. And these all have an effect. So when change happens in some part of this global system that we could kind of generally call the environment, then this change kind of reverberates into basically all other parts, all other circulations are affected by it. And since the chief regulators of these biogeochemical cycles are the ecosystems of this planet, then we obviously cannot talk about climate change without talking about vast ecospheric changes to the planet. So the picture there shows a prediction by the University of Southampton made a few years ago about the vulnerability of ecosystems to climate change or by cause of climate change in the 21st century. So red means that there is a very, very high confidence of great vulnerability ahead. As you can see, Europe is basically all red, as there is only about 4% of Europe's total area that is being conserved right now and untouched of intensive human activity. The point that I'm trying to make here is that climate change is environmental change, that we cannot look at them separately from each other. And while there are still raging debates over whether humans are causing major changes to the Earth's climate, I think it's quite certain that there is a consensus on humans making environmental changes to the planet. So what are causing all these changes? Well, definitely there are natural causes, and there have always been, and the climate has been changing throughout the history of the Earth due to these natural causes. So you can talk about the changes of sun activity or Milankovitch cycles, volcanic eruptions, or even meteorites plummeting on Earth. But what sets them apart, firstly, from anthropogenic causes is that these natural causes tend to be cyclical. So they follow kind of a sinusoid. The activity of the sun at times intensifies and then it alleviates. And they change gradually, with more time generally, than with what we're seeing now with anthropogenic changes. But anthropogenic causes are like a freight train, and the freight train that is getting faster and faster. And so it's like we're seeing like a wave of human activities that are having an adverse effect on the ecosphere as a whole. And I think one of the chief ways that this is illustrated is by global terraforming. So as of today, we can say with great confidence that only about 25% of the terrestrial land of planet Earth is untouched or virtually untouched by intensive human activity. And I must say intensive, because there is definitely also not a single square meter of land on Earth on which you could not see human activity. But roughly a quarter of it is still kind of the land of the wild. And in oceans, this number is about 13%. Just 13% of oceans are untouched by intensive human activities. In the last 100 years, the human population has increased about 4 times. And in the same time, we have doubled our arable farmland. We have increased our water use by 8 times. It's about 4 trillion tons of fresh water yearly now. By the way, this is about as much as the whole of humanity would need as drinking water for 400 years. And our energy use has skyrocketed to 16 times of a century ago. One more number, perhaps in the same time, even though that our population has increased so much, at the same time, we're consuming almost 40 times as much goods as we were 100 years ago. In the last 50 years, 60% of vertebrate populations on this planet, and we're not talking about humans, we're not talking about livestock, chickens, we're talking about wild animals, have simply vanished. And right now, scientists are talking about and very, very, very seriously contemplating, dare I say, hysteria about the fact that the insects, one of the most critically important trophic levels of terrestrial ecosystems, are just facing an absolutely unfathomable collapse. We're seeing collapses ranging from 70 to 90, 98% loss of crawling insect populations in some ecosystems. And these are all ecosystems that regulate these great cycles that I mentioned, that kind of are at the very core of what make out, I could say, the life-enabling, life support systems of this planet. So if we would look, well, right now it's very dark, but if we would look out the window and imagine a world without life, then what we would see, what would we see? Well, probably there would be no forests, there would be no trees, there would be no snow falling, but there would be no soil. There would be probably no lakes, much fewer mountains even. There would be no clouds. Without life, this planet would be, well, kind of like Mars, maybe a bit more grim. So it makes absolutely no sense to me that right now we are not putting enough focus on what scientists are saying is the most important question of our time. So all the while we are debating over the measure of anthropogenic causes, climate change. There's this great polarization of climate skeptics versus, you could call maybe, climate hysterics. And they're throwing these accusations at each other. Oh, this is all some kind of political conspiracy to raise taxes and enslave the people, or they are saying all of this just to hinder the corporations' market share or whatever. But when it is so apparent that the climate changing is completely linked with environmental changing, that is undeniable at this point, then does it matter who or what is causing it? What would happen if, well, let's say that the climate deniers turned out to be right. Let's say that humans indeed have no effect on what's going on right now with the ecosystem collapse. Then what would happen? Well, isn't this the kind of prime nihilism in its core? So if we think about that, the chances of mitigating any kind of damage that we have done would be mute, zero. So we better hope at this point that the scientists, the 90+% consensus of scientists are right. And in saying that humans affect climate and environmental change on a large degree, because that in turn translates to there is something we can do about it. So before I end, I already said this, but I will say it again, that we're well past the point of debating climate change. Right now, it is time for action. It is not time for accusations. And it is a time of very, very unique challenges because humanity has never faced a challenge like this. But it is not only a challenge, it also presents with itself an opportunity, because I think every challenge is also an opportunity. And it's an opportunity to cooperate. It's an opportunity to look beyond our differences and our ideologies. I'm sure that if we really think about it, that then there are many, many more aspects about life that unify every single human being on this planet than there are arguments to divide us. So, yeah, maybe a bit idealistic, but we need to really, really increase our cooperation on this question. And I have hope. I want to end with hope, as is the custom, I believe, in these cataclysmic presentations. I have hope because humans throughout history are very, very adept at self-preservation, at self-defense from a perceived enemy or threat. So what we need to do is realize that the whole of humanity is facing a single threat, and it is facing it together. I mean, just look at the technological prowess of and innovation and creativity that humans are putting into military technology and evolving our military prowess. So if we took this innovation and creativity and changed it to address what truly is the greatest threat, maybe a challenge to humanity, then I believe that we can solve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mattias, and we'll discuss later on, further on, but now I'm happy to introduce Joonas Plaan here. Joonas will talk about the potential cultural and social effects that climate change could have on Estonia. He is an environmental anthropologist studying the nature and experience of climate change on human cultures. He has conducted research among coastal fishermen in Kihnu Island, Estonia, and Newfoundland in Canada. While as an anthropologist, his work has concentrated on local communities, the study has shown how global climate change runs through individuals and communities, international trade networks, and intergovernmental agreements, affecting not only the environment and ecosystem, but also local culture and social structures. So the floor is yours, Joonas. Just quick reminder again about Slido as well. If you go to slido.com and enter the code, which is hashtag 4897, you can already ask questions, which we'll answer later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Silver, and thank you, Mattias, for this presentation. My name is then Joonas Plaan. I'm an environmental anthropologist, lecturer in anthropology in Tallinn University, and probably after this presentation, I'm known as the Potato Man. In 2018, Estonia enjoyed the summer of the century. According to the data from Estonian Weather Service, the summer of 2018 was the longest climatic summer Estonians have ever experienced. Climatic summer means that the average temperature of 24 hours is above 13 degrees. Last year, there was 137 such days, breaking the previous record from 2013 by 8 days. While no other records were broken, the long, warm and dry summer of 2018 have revealed us some of the uncanny effects of climate change. In order to talk about potential cultural and social effects of climate change in Estonia, I will use the summer of 2018 as an example It's not common for me as an anthropologist to talk about the future. In broad terms, the science of anthropology, while embracing an enormous range of topics and approaches, deals with an issue of how we think about us as humans living in a society. In other words, anthropologists ask, what is to be a human? How do we come to be as we are? What do we have in common as human beings? And what ways do we differ from one place, time, or cultural setting to another? And believe me or not, we do not study bones, nor do we measure any skulls anymore. Quite often, our study subjects actually lives in Western society and not anymore in somewhere exotic tribe in the middle of jungle. Anthropologists have shown that understanding human beings in society is not simply about studying local communities, but also about studying national and international policies, transnational economics, and global scientific discourses, and the transmission of knowledge. The summer of 2018 gives an excellent opportunity to think about the potential effects of climate change, not only to Estonians, but to wider society in general. For that, I would like to use a simple example: Estonians and potatoes. Before I will get to the potatoes, it is necessary to get one more thing clear. In general, climate is used to describe the accumulated patterns of weather in certain places, the statistics of weather. Changes in climate are perceivable only in terms of years and generations. In climatology, it is agreed that the scale of time to measure climate is 30 years. Nevertheless, climate can be also understood culturally. As an idea, climate provides an experience of stability, something that does not change in less than a generation. Weather, on the other hand, is temporary and undergoes change within hours, days, weeks, or months. For example, summer is a weather event. Therefore, people do not perceive global climate change, but rather the local aspects of environmental change, as Mattias already brought out, that are caused by climate change. The record-long summer in Estonia is then not so much an example of how climate has changed in Estonia, but a case of extreme weather that is the effect of climate change. Scientists around the world agree today that in general such extreme weather is becoming more common, whether it comes in the form of rainstorm, rainfall, or hurricane. This is the new reality. The question is, what does it mean to live in such reality? So, potatoes. Raise your hand, it's hard to see from here, but raise your hand who does not eat potato. 2 people. Can I ask, why don't you eat potato? But you have eaten potato. Well, I believe potato is pretty universal. Not does it show that all Estonians eat potato. There's at least 2 people, but it's still part of our culture. Can anybody name the name of the varieties of the potatoes I have here? These are all potatoes. They have been grown in Estonia, breeded especially for Estonian climate and soil. So anyone, maybe any Estonians can name any? Yeah. Ja täiesti õige vastus tuli kohe ära. Üks on tõesti Laura ja see on see, mis mul siin kõige ülemine on. Kas keegi oskab veel midagi nimetada? Can somebody name any more any other? No. No. Well, this used to be a common knowledge. I remember from my childhood how potatoes in our basement were divided into groups according to varieties, which are good for frying, boiling, or baking. For example, this one is really good for frying. My grandmother has her own preferences and grew only potatoes that were good for boiling. Even though our family preferred fried potatoes, it was no problem because also my grandmother's brother was growing potatoes, as well as his neighbors and many friends of my mother. Each late summer and autumn, we visited those relatives and friends, helped them to pick the potatoes, and on a way created bonds that in many cases last till today. It was a social structure created through growing, picking, and eating potatoes. Today, I have no idea which variety is actually good for frying. I just had to look it up from internet. Nor I have picked any potato last 25 years. The social structure my mother unintentionally created is slowly vanishing. I blame climate change. Potato, one of the few Estonian grown vegetable one can get from supermarket in late January, has been historically one of the most important plants in Estonia. While it was brought to Europe from South America only in 16th century by Spanish colonizers, it quickly became the most important vegetable in Europe, and so also in Estonia. Potato helped to relieve the starvation in Europe caused by the Little Ice Age and socioeconomic difficulties it brought. In Estonia, potato was introduced in mid-18th century, and like elsewhere in Europe, it helped to relieve the starvation that had lasted already for centuries. After 1870, as an agricultural product, potato reached its new heights by becoming an important source of wealth of vodka distilling feudal lords. Once Russian Tsar monopolized vodka production, the potato ended more on the plates of Estonians rather than in the bottles. By the 20th century, 25% of agricultural land was covered with potato plant. During Soviet era, Estonia was known as Potato Republic, feeding not only its nation, but also people further in Soviet Union. In early 1990s, after Estonia had regained its independence and was facing economic difficulties, Estonian President Lennart Meri, who is an anthropologist by the way, called his people to sustain, even if it means that they have to eat potato peels. If you ask today, and I'm sure many of you have done so, what is traditional Estonian dish, you probably have gotten an answer. There isn't none, but if there is something, potato is included to that. You can say with confidence that potato is part of Estonian culture. Nevertheless, the summer of 2018 may have shown us potential new ways how we will relate to potato in the future. Potato growers in Estonia were in trouble. Because of the war, potatoes matured 2 weeks earlier than usually, shifting the entire logistics in most farms. At the same time, though, the fields were giving 20 to 50% less potato than in average year. For the customers, this meant 150% higher price. But even with a higher price, many farmers were facing economical difficulties. Difficulties did not just happen, but had accumulated over 3 years of drought and low output from the fields. For the first time over 20 years, Estonian farmers started to sell their agricultural land in bulk. According to Estonian Chamber of Agriculture and Commerce, farmers were selling either to quit from the sector or to pay for the losses. Where there is tragedy, there are also opportunities. Many large-scale farmers used the situation and started to buy the land, usually offering 20% less from the market price. As a result, in 2019, there will be less small-scale farmers in Estonia than ever. Most of the potato will be imported. Rest is grown in large-scale farms, highly technological, well-capitalized. These farms, while large in area, hire less people than small farms. The production is highly automated and slowly becoming separated from most Estonians. In this process, grandmother's potato fields become replaced with bags of potatoes from Latvia, for example, where turnover tax is lower than in Estonia. Related to that, the potato consumption and production is showing decline. Since 1996, the consumption has declined from 140 kilograms per household to 38 kilograms in 2016. While the amount of imported potato has slowly increased, the biggest decline has been in consumption of potato that has been grown by ourselves. By large, most of the potato we eat, we get from a store. It is yet less studied, but the hypothesis is that the less we grow potatoes with our own hands, the less we consume it, and the less we feel connected with the plant and food being consumed. And the trend is not showing anything positive. According to a recent study, the relative impact of climate change on potato production by 2055 in Estonia shows -50 to -5% change in yields, more declining in central Estonia and less in western Estonia. Does that mean that in future potato becomes a less consumed imported vegetable? Hence, will potato become something part of past, traditional, yet only celebrated on special occasions? Will potato lose its importance in Estonian culture as seal meat has done so in Kihnu culture, for example? On the other hand, climate change may present also opportunities. For example, the knowledge we have about potatoes may be put in use to help others. Experienced plant biologist Vive Rosenberg is today in Kenya developing a method to grow potato in warm and dry climate. She hopes that her method will help Kenyans to strengthen their food security and come out from poverty, as potato has done so centuries ago in Europe. Is then exporting the knowledge of growing potato also a way how to export our culture? Climate change is not only changes in climate, nor also not only in environment. It is everything change. It is not only that we grow and eat less potato, but we see much wider change in food culture. Longer and warmer summers present opportunities hard to understand yet, but already today we can see the effects of warmer and longer summer in our agriculture. We are seeing how Brezhnev stream to grow corn industrially in Estonia is finally taking shape in the face of global warming. In the last decade, the potato fields of central Estonia are slowly replaced with cornfields, a sight that was 10 years ago seen only in American movies. Grape growers in Estonia were celebrating their best harvest in history after the long summer of 2018, saying that the long summer is more suitable for the plants, more common in warmer climates. These are just few examples from human-created environments, but similar processes are going also in nature. The expansion of young oak trees in Estonian forest or the arrival of golden jackal to Estonia are just few examples how milder winter weather can attract new species. According to biologists and zoologists, this natural diversification is welcoming. But let us think for a moment, if this may mean that next to stories of clever fox and strong bear, Estonians will also tell stories of smart jackal to their children in their future. Will golden jackal become part of Estonian culture, Estonian folklore? Altogether, I have presented here a very simplified story of how climate change has and may potentially change Estonians' relationship with the environment in the future. Whether it is the growth of wealth, interest in world cuisine, or changed tribe preferences, tax policies in neighbor countries, or agricultural subsidies from Brussels, the reasons why potato is playing less importance in our culture are complex. Climate change effects cannot be studied without holistically understanding the relations of power, culture, and nature as an organic whole. The route between global causes and local effects are long and complicated, including our history, cultural meanings, and social systems. Hence, when we talk about climate change, we should not only talk primarily about physical processes, which definitely must be stopped, but as a process that is closely entwined with cultural and social. In the end, so what if we eat less potatoes? As long as the summers are warm, who cares about them? Although we enjoyed the best summer of all times last year, I doubt that many of us were thinking how this warm summer will impact our cultural behavior and social habits, like food choices, for example. Eating less potatoes does not make us less Estonian, but it definitely has shaped our culture and who we are today. Maybe then, and this is one idea I would like for you to take with you today. It is worth to think what we eat today and how will this shape us as humans in 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Joonas. It was very specific, and hopefully we know more about it now. And happy to introduce Mihkel Kangur. Mihkel will give an overview of the current state of Estonian nature and environment. Just a few words about Mihkel as well. Mihkel is an Estonian ecologist who is currently an associate professor of sustainable development at the Tallinn University Institute for Ecology. In recent years, he has focused on sustainable and development-related education. He has been president of the Estonian Geographic Society since 2009, and in this capacity has also taken an active stance on the issue of the Rail Baltica infrastructure project. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm trying to give a short overview about the Estonian current state of environment, as it is mentioned. But in context of the climate change, this is what you are seeing outside. This is exactly how the climate change looks like by the prediction of the models, by the prediction of the scientists who have worked with these issues for decades. The Institute of Ecology, where I'm working, when I was a student, the colleagues of mine, they won the Estonian Scientific Prize based on the works where they made the first predictions of the climate change in Estonia and in Baltic countries, etc., etc. And this is what's happening is exactly what they have predicted. The scientific models are right. The climate is changing, and from the perspective of my own studies, I know, I have studied the vegetation history of Estonia, and I can see from my data that the climate has always changed. It is nothing new. It is changing. But we tend to underestimate the power of humans. One of my findings of my studies is showing that during the last 3,000 years, the humans have had stronger influence on the Estonian vegetation than the climate. As a scientist, I must say the most probably, because it is most probable so, but we can see that over the thousands of years, the humans has developed their culture, the culture has developed together with the environment. The human impact into the vegetation, we don't need to take it as something negative only. It is developing together. In the rest of the Europe, this development started some thousands of years earlier, some 8,000, right after the last ice age. 3,000 years ago, Estonians used the bronze tools, and there was most probably some 200,000 people. Now we have 1.3 million people, and we don't use anymore the bronze tools, so for some years. And we can imagine what is our impact at the moment. The strongest impact that Estonians have onto the environment at the moment, and considering the environmental cohesion of Estonia, basically we can say the only worry what we have is oil shale industry. Our energy is coming mostly from the oil shale combustion or burning the oil shale, which is material which is not very rich on energy. It is not very wise to use this material, but we have done this for 100 years. And the political view is that if it works, why we should stop it. But with this, we are one of the dirtiest nation in OECD. That producing the CO2 per capita is highest. It is some third place or something like this, considering the other OECD countries. And we are also material intensive on our productions. So we, because of the oil shale mining, yeah, it's producing the CO2, the greenhouse gases. It's causing our effects on the water cycle, the health conditions of the people on that area. They tend to live less years. Their health condition is poorer. But it is very profitable for us. This is why the Estonian politicians doesn't take necessary actions for that. We have known that the situation is becoming worse and worse for decades. We have known, scientists have warned for the climate change for 100 years. There are publications from beginning of last century where the scientists are arguing that if we are starting to use fossil fuels for such amount, the climate change will happen. And now we are in the situation that if we are looking in very long time perspective, some hundreds of thousands of years, we can see that the climate has always changed together with greenhouse gases concentration on the air. And it has been always fluctuated, the CO2 concentration in atmosphere, something between 200 to 220, 230, 40, something like this, particles per million particles. Now, in these years, now we have reached over the 410 particles per million particles. We have doubled, and this have happened with very few last decades, that the greenhouse gases concentration has risen dramatically. And actually, the scientists doesn't know exactly what's happening now, because if we are taking only, considering only the climate greenhouse gases, then the models are one aspect. But we need to consider what have happened with ecosystems on the Earth. Previously, the forests were these who balanced out, forests and ocean ecosystems who balanced out the greenhouse gases and controlled the temperature of the Earth. Now we have destroyed our forests, we have destroyed our oceans. So the predictions, what's happening are next, are these that we don't know. There are models are showing that the turbulent years are coming in some 15, 20 years, that then there is a tipping point where there is no point to return. So you try the last times of the taste of potatoes, etc. Because if the climate change, one thing what we know that probably the environment will be absolutely different than what it was now. And as for eating, we have domesticated some 500 species or something like this, but in major of our energy, our calories are coming from very few number of species which are we have domesticated, and what are dominating now on the Earth. The environmental conditions are not favorable for them, most probably anymore after this dipping point. So we need to find new sources of food, most probably, if we are surviving. Coming back to the Estonian condition, it's nothing much to talk about this. At the moment, we are in the country where the environmental conditions are most probably one of the best in the world. By the environmental performance index, which has where we have dropped a little bit, the cause or the biggest problem besides oil shale mining is our forestry because forestry industry, that's clear cuttings, massive clear cuttings, what is a major way of forest maintenance, has caused dramatic loss of our forest ecosystems and related species. But still, we are living like in behind of the Mother's God, like what means Mary's land, where we live. That the climate changes doesn't affect Estonia so much. The Baltics, the north of Poland, are the countries which does not suffer so much on the climate change. Predictions have shown that the biggest threat for us is coming from the turbulences caused by the mass immigration and the refugees. That's a political influences on our society are much greater than the climate change itself. We can see that the climate will change, so that we have in winters a few weeks with very cold winters. We have more storms. Storminess has increased in winter time, which affects a little bit the infrastructure built onto the seashores. And in summer times, the temperature will rise, or will be more heat waves. This may cause some deaths in our people. But considering what's happening in the rest of the world, it is basically nothing. So we live one of the most best country at all. But this has caused us that we are living like in trap. For Estonians, it is quite hard to understand then what's a worry about the climate change, because we don't see it. We don't see it, how it affects us. We are stubborn to take any actions to take care of the climate change. We still continue to use oil shale minings, oil shale industry, because it is so profitable for us, and there are social issues related with this, etc., etc. We can hear it from the politicians every year that we must move over from the oil shale to something else, but we can't do it right now. We need to talk about this, and so on. It continues and continues, because we don't see the threats of the environmental changes, and our environment is so safe. We don't have any threats from the environment comparing to the rest of the world in average. So we can say that the biggest threat for Estonians is the stupidity of the Estonians themselves, that we are very well educated people, one of the best educated people in the world, according to the PISA tests. We are very well informed. Several studies, Eurostat has shown, we are very well informed all about the environmental issues, about the environmental conditions of Estonia, etc., etc., etc. But why we don't act accordingly? This will talk Grete now after me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mihkel. So I'm happy to welcome here our last presenter tonight, Grete Arro. And Grete will talk about the aspects that impact and influence environmental behavior. Grete is an educational psychologist working as a researcher in Tallinn University. Her main research and teaching focus are different aspects of learning. Her side interest is environmental psychology and pro-environmental behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, my topic is how being a human is actually a threat to this environment we want to live in. And when you think of it, we have discussed many topics outside of us, and maybe now it's time to turn to think of what's inside of us and what's affecting our behavior, what we choose to do on daily basis, and also what kind of political representatives we tend to choose. And scientists have studied, I think, about 50 years already, what kind of candidates in our heads, in our behavior, can be the reasons for the not so sustainable behavior. And there are so many ideas being scientists, more social psychologists, have studied values and norms and attitudes and also knowledge. And actually, there isn't so good. There isn't so good agreement upon what's really important, why we behave not in a way that's wise. And maybe when you think of it, why we do that, why our behavior had led us into the edge of ecological and climate catastrophe. What do you think? Why? What's in you? What kind of traits? What kind of attributes? Greed, laziness, yes. Absolutely, yeah. Sorry? A separation of what from what? Okay, yeah. So there are actually, you have many ideas of it. But when I put it that way, Mattias told you about a water cycle and another cycle probably. And you had, you used the term biogeochemical cycle. Was it like this? Yes. When I ask how many of you, when you do your behavioral choices, like when you choose how to, what kind of transportation you use, how you consume stuff, and so on, how many of you rise into your working memory? Working memory is like your mental desktop. The idea and the details of this geochemical cycle. You think about it when you're like shopping. Not so much, yes. And actually, I'm not so fascinated of social psychologists. I like more cognitive psychologists and neuroscientists who study how our brain works. And actually, our behavior is pretty much related to our brain. And to put it really simply, the world we are living in has systemic nature. One of those systems you described, everybody are describing world in a systemic way. But our thinking is linear. It's not situated to understanding systemic things. It's not spontaneous way of thinking to nobody. So we want to think in causal relationships. We want to understand really simple and linear principles, but we are not able without specific training to understand things that aren't that simple. So when the way of our thinking doesn't reflect actually the world we're living in, but our thinking actually reflects more our cognitive capabilities, then we cannot do right decisions because our decisions. Yes, you have a question. Yes, sure, please. Yes.
If we were thinking linearly, we would understand that when we buy one time using containers, plastic containers in the supermarket, and don't reuse it, every day, everybody, 365 containers per day, per year, per person, multiplied by millions of people, then we shouldn't be surprised that we have a big chunk of the Pacific Ocean covered in plastic, because it's obvious. If we think linearly, we predict it, but we don't think linearly. We simplify our presumed linear thinking, because if we were thinking linearly, we would predict it.
I would say we don't even think linearly. It's worse than that. Yes, I try to be polite, but thank you. Yeah. Usually when we start thinking at all, then the relationships we are thinking of tend to be linear, but not systemic. So even linear thinking isn't enough to understand the systemic nature of the world. And so, as every scientist know, most of the scientific information is more often than not contra-intuitive. So what our intuition about the world gives us or tells us is wrong. It is like this because our thinking machine has evolved over so long period when we didn't really need to understand any systemic or even causal relationship. And when we think about how the laypersons, not we here, but all the others, how we construct our knowledge. So, for example, we have so many, or most of people have misconceptions, or it's another polite term. It's alternative conceptions. Scientists tend to say misconceptions earlier, but now I have heard it's even not good to say so. But they have wrong or everyday or perception-based conceptions about most of the areas that are not their own field. So most of us have misconceptions about mechanics, about physics, laws of physics, and about ecology. And it is the way our thinking develops. It always starts in a way that first, when we get some new information, then we tend to form in our heads really primitive childlike conceptions called whatever, everyday concepts, for example. And we tend to form understanding based on how we perceive the world. But as scientists know, most of the rules in the world are not perceivable. Most of the principles in the world are not perceivable via our senses. And this is the problem. We think that our senses gives us understanding of the world. Many people think that their intuition is great source of information, but actually intuition doesn't help us to understand anything that is real. And so the next level of our thinking, when we are in an environment where scientific, formal, logical, and hierarchical thinking is popular, is existent, then it's possible that our thinking will develop too into the direction that we understand that not everything and most of the important forces in the world, most of the principles aren't directly perceivable, but we can think of them. It's able. We have one channel, an additional channel of perception. It is the language and verbally, semiotically mediated world. And a simple example of it, many times studied in concept development, is the shape of the Earth. What is the shape of the Earth in your perception? Of course, it's flat, yes. Nobody has ever perceived the sphericness of the world, but we all know it. And we know it not via our senses. That means that when we think our senses are telling the right information, then we're wrong. And actually, in all areas of knowledge that are new for us, we have misconceptions. But when we are adults, when we are grown-ups, and we think that we are like, we can vote and everything, we know things. Actually, we don't know. We know only one topic, and this is our own topic. And it means that when Mihkel says that we are kind of informed, and we have, I don't know, high test scores in PISA or something, then actually this knowledge that we are able to show in tests, for example, or in questionnaires, isn't really knowledge, because this knowledge is constructed. It doesn't have the scientific structure. It's learned as a verbalisms. Mostly we talk about verbalisms when children use terms or concepts they don't really understand. And I think we as adults use a lot of verbalisms when we talk about ecological principles. We can use them and we can give right answers to the tests, but the understanding about, for example, water cycle or some other ecological principle, when we don't when we don't know it and we haven't like internalized it, then we are not able to rise it into our working memory, into our mental desktop in the moment we are doing the choices. And actually what's really stunning in the study, how much time I have, because I'm really bad in. Okay, very good, thank you. And what's really cool in neuroscientific studies, for example, in London, they have a great group and one scientist called Dennis Marshall made a really wonderful summary of our current knowledge of why actually we are so resistant in understanding new and right scientific concepts and letting go those old based on perception concepts. And neuroscientists, when they scan the brain or when they look into your brain, they understand that experts and novices, like experts in some field like physics or ecology or medicine, whatever, experts actually also have those primitive conceptions of everything. For example, primitive concepts of mechanics or something that they're not dealing every day. But what is better in their brains is not the ability to activate the right information, but the ability to inhibit the wrong information. And this is something, the activity in those areas in the brain that are dealing with inhibiting pre-knowledge, not right pre-knowledge. This activity is stronger in experts and weaker in novices. And so actually what we have to train and what we have to understand, that then thinking about something is not only activating right information. It doesn't help if you activate, if you tell people the right information, it doesn't work. But you have to make people conscious of their wrong, primitive understanding, misconceptions, and they have to consciously inhibit them. So this is something, this is actually a new sheet, I would say, in understanding conceptual development. And I think this is one way we should look when we try to change that information that comes to your mind when you do your daily choices that might be anti-environmental. So actually I have 10 more topics, but I don't have more time.
We'll have some more time afterwards,
Yes.
during the discussion. So thank you, Grete. Just quick statistics as well. We have about 125 people here and from 19 different nationalities. And unlike usual at our events, where we have about 50% are Estonians, tonight roughly about 2/3 are Estonians. So interesting. But anyway, we'll have a short break now, about 15 minutes. The bar is open, and afterwards we'll continue with the discussion, and you can all ask questions. Thank you. 111. Okay. So welcome back, everyone, to Estonishing Evenings 12th event. Is climate change a threat to Estonia? Those of you who joined us during the event, we're discussing what impact does climate change have on Estonia, how does Estonia impact on that, and what is the general condition of Estonian nature and environment. And we're gonna take many questions now. You can also ask questions through Slido, slido.com. Event code is #4897. And there are already quite a few questions through Slido. So let's actually start with that, since the audience couldn't ask any questions before. And let's start with the Põxit. So I'll explain those. I think Estonians know what Põxit stands for, but perhaps people who have come here recently from other countries do not know. It's meant here about Estonian põlevkivi tööstus, and in English, oil shale industry. So we now are very much dependent on oil from oil shale industry. It's based in Estonia's Ida-Viru County, which is on the east side of Estonia. And the question here is from someone who hasn't given the name. Is Põxit really possible? How much time is needed for Põxit to happen? / creating new jobs, etc. What will be the alternatives? And very similar question from Tina. What other energy solutions could Estonia reasonably embrace? I mean, in brackets, probably not solar energy with question mark. So who wants to start? Just your mics as well, please.
Yeah, there is a lot of legends about oil shales that mostly saying that no, we can't leave it because there are Russians, there is social threats, they start to fight against Estonia, so it's better to keep it calm and not touching the oil shale. And like this, we have been for the last 25 years, and we have lost the possibility to be as leaders on innovation and R&D on the alternative energy sources. We have lost our engineers, we have lost our capacities to develop such sources. But it's now we need to start to invent, or we need to start to think about this. And definitely it is not single source what we can use. There are different sources like wind, solar, biomass, hydrogen, etc., what we could use at the moment already. But there are a lot of potential from R&D to come out with these new things. And yes, in a longer perspective, most probably we need to talk through about the nuclear power. That is it possible? We don't know. I'm not at the moment on the position to say yes or no. There is not enough information about the new solutions, but this is the case that we need to invest a lot into R&D to solve this problem, and quickly.
Just a quick fact as well, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I checked the number of people who are employed in Ida-Viru County through oil shale industry, and I got the number 6,000. Is that the correct number?
Most probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not very big number to consider, and as the rest of the world in the United States and so on, the numbers are showing that there are more jobs in alternative energy sectors than on the fossil fuel now.
Yeah, Joonas?
Yeah, absolutely. There's only one solution to climate change, that is to keep the fossil fuels in ground, and we definitely have to do that also with shale oil. And when we are like what politicians these days are talking, like you already said, that there may be some social riots, but we should also see this as an opportunity to invest lots of money into R&D, to use that 6,000 people, not anymore underground digging that shale oil, but maybe working in high capital, high paid workplaces. This may not only be a solution for our ecological footstep, but also this may be a solution how to bring that fairly poor minority, Russian-speaking minority in Ida-Viru County among Estonians much better way than all the integration programs that so far government has done.
Yeah, we must keep in mind that the northeast of Estonia, where the oil shale mostly lies, where the industry is, that in general, the people have very strong traditions and background on engineering. So that it is like family traditions, they're very good in physics, mathematics in the schools and so on. So that we could use their potential. But at the moment, we are not using it very wisely.
I would quickly add or comment that Germany a few days ago pledged to go coal-free, I believe, with a time span of 20 years. And this is a little bit of time after they pledged to go nuclear-free. So again, I imagine there is a huge debate going on there right now. How are we going to do this? How is it going to happen? And similar things are happening here. But I think it's a very difficult question in the sense that energy production is one of these industries or industries that we still don't have already a technological prowess that we can just replace the old system with, as opposed to some other industries that we could also already start changing and are already changing. And it takes immense courage from German politicians or anyone really to say that this is really what we must do. And it's a very difficult question because we are kind of at a crossroads here. Or really, it's not a crossroads. It's like a bridge into the future or an abyss. So there's no highway option. So when we realize that there is no highway option, it's not a question of maybe we could not do it, really.
Just quickly, sorry if I missed something, but how much impact would it have on our energy prices? That's what consumers are obviously concerned about. Whether, if we stopped using the oil shale industry, how much would it push up our energy prices? Any analysis on that? No.
Just that the rate at which renewable energy cost is declining right now is accelerating. So there is definitely hope to think.
Yeah, there is we are in open market, and the price of the electricity is not coming from the price of the oil shale electricity, but it's coming from the market. So definitely, if one source is disappearing from the market, means that the prices in overall Nord Pool it goes up. So definitely, this is right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but audience has asked many questions. My colleague Reelika is keeping an eye on Slido questions. Reelika,
one that has been.
Your mic working?
No.
Working now, I think.
I'll ask a few questions that have been upvoted. The highest one at the moment, how polluted is the Baltic Sea actually, and how does it affect Estonia? We all know it's quite polluted.
I didn't know, sorry.
I don't know how to describe it. What does it mean? It is polluted. It is Baltic Sea is one of the most polluted seas in the world, and there are the pollution coming from very, very multiple sources, and for very, very long time already. What I heard yesterday from colleagues from Marine Institute, they said that fish stocks are recovering. So it is not so high as it was on 100 years ago, but they don't see decline anymore. But there are some dioxins and there are problems. So don't eat too much fish from Baltic Sea and so on. There are some issues, but yeah, we need to be concerned. We need to be worried about this. But some things are getting better as well.
Yeah, just a second. Let me just give a comment and then we'll come to
Yeah,
you.
from a few years ago, I can't remember the study where this was talked about, but a few years ago, the situation was that you could eat about 100 grams of Baltic Sea fish a week. That would be kind of considered a safe amount. Any more than that, and you are potentially threatening your organism with dioxin poisoning already. And I imagine that this number has now gotten even worse. So there are these very concrete effects already.
Okay, thank you. And gentleman over there, can you just introduce, also say where you come from? So it would be interesting to everyone to hear because it's very diverse audience.
I live in Estonia permanently, but I'm originally from Italy. But I lived most of my life outside of Italy. My question may sound extremely stupid, so I apologize in advance. Is there any nuclear waste in the Baltic Sea?
There are different source of waste, but what you mean, the nuclear waste, you mean that some containers buried into the sea or so on? We have Estonians, we had
A Soviet submarine with this nuclear power, which is sunk and nobody has ever
we don't know.
out, something like that.
We don't have any kind of information about this. Officially, we don't. I haven't heard anything about this. But we have, for example, Estonia have the heavy metals and nuclear power waste deposit pool right next to the Baltic Sea in Sillamäe, and we have the nuclear waste deposition site also in Paldiski. So they already from the Soviet time, and so thanks for the EU, it's quite well maintained at the moment.
But sorry. Yeah, but in related to climate change, I believe not so much the pollution, but what is happening because of the warming climate. That's probably the biggest concerns we have with the Baltic Sea. The sea is definitely getting warmer. It's losing its salinity. The species have changed. They are changing. So also the winds have become much stronger than say 50 years ago. So with that, we're actually also losing knowledge what's actually happening with Baltic Sea. It's all quite unknown. The future is a bit tricky, and it's hard to make those predictions when we're seeing how fast actually the ecosystem, the marine ecosystem in Baltic Sea is actually changing. I'm sure Mihkel and Mattias can talk more about that.
I'm quickly coming back to nuclear though, because just yesterday an old academic, Anto Raukas, right, proposed that we should have or could have. Was it? Sorry, I didn't actually have. I must admit, I didn't have time to read the article. I saw the headline only. Very superficial of me, but he proposed, I think, that we should have a nuclear power plant in the future.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, we talked to Anto Raukas today. He's our colleague in Tallinn University as well, and he's just very, very worried about the younger generation. He's, I don't know, 80, something like this. Yeah, that he's worried that from where we are getting the electricity, and then he has promoted the nuclear power since I don't know how long, and he's a smart guy, and he has worked with the nuclear power issues since 60s or something. He has been the youngest academician in Estonian Academy of Sciences, and he has he has kept us away from the Soviet type of nuclear power station what was planned to build next to the Lake Võrtsjärv. He worked with a team to find solution not to build it there. Even their task was to find out how it would be possible to build, and they built it the Sosnovyy Bor near the Leningrad, St. Petersburg instead of this. So luckily, we don't have at the moment problems with Soviet style nuclear power station, but we had in Paldiski this nuclear submarine training center where they used the nuclear power engine as a training site there, and so we are dealing with this problem.
But talking about this option or this idea, do you think that some, let's say, political parties, for example, would propose it? And what is your opinion on that? You know, if there was a discussion to build a nuclear power plant.
Yeah, I had to answer that question yesterday. My answer was that at the moment we are not ready to discuss about this because we don't have enough knowledge in Estonia about the new generation of the nuclear power station. We should raise the young new generation about who could explain, who could understand first, and who could explain what does it mean, the fourth generation of the nuclear power station. That maybe then we are ready to talk about this.
Okay, Reelika, have you got questions from Slido?
The next one would be, sorry, very closely related to that. And I can also mention that we plan to organize a political debate in English here in February as well. So we'll let you know. But the next question would be, who are the most eco-friendly Estonian political parties? Who should I vote for to reduce climate change? I think Mattias can answer that.
I hope the questions didn't come from a Green Party members or something.
Definitely, I would say that this is a Richness of Life party, where I am the prime minister candidate, of course. But the colleagues and then good friends in the Green Party as well is a good choice. So you should check who you know best, or how you see is a good candidate from your this.
Let's put it this way: you two are out from answering this question because
I just want to say I also think that it's a close tie.
Yeah, because full disclosure, one of them belongs to the Green Party, the other one to the new party called Richness of Life. We didn't mention deliberately that because it's not a political event, so you're not allowed to comment on that. We leave Grete and Joonas to comment on that because I assume you're not member of either of them.
Well,
are you? Sorry,
well, no, I'm not. But I think not maybe to think like who to elect. We should maybe think who not to elect, and to think
right,
and to think how we can make the environmental voice heard in parliamentary, and definitely these two parties who are sitting here are those two. But there are few more. But I believe you should read who is against change in environmental policies in Estonia.
And I have thought there are so many important species in Estonia who are not able to vote, but who are constantly working for us. So many bacteria, fungi, and so on, who are really important. And so I suggest to vote for a party who are representing them, who are representing those who are living, keeping us alive. And I'm really happy that we have a country which have like two green parties. So this is a richness of life.
Thank you. Reelika, have we got any more Slido questions? Oh yeah, we got the audience question here as well.
Very many, but yeah, continue with the audience.
Just introduce yourself as well and say where you're from, please.
Lauri, I'm from Finland, but I'm a resident here. It's not really a question, it's a commentary on the German example that was taken here. I was discussing it earlier. I wouldn't use Germany as an example of green energy revolution, because after they closed these nuclear plants, they actually started using a lot of coal, and their CO2 emissions have gone way up in Germany. And actually the only countries who are now on board with the Paris Climate Agreement are France and Sweden. Sweden with hydropower and nuclear energy, and France with mostly nuclear energy. I'm not saying it's the solution for everything. It's definitely not a silver bullet, but it's something that must be discussed. And especially these newer reactors, they are very different from these old Soviet style reactors that were pointed out earlier.
I like to comment that one thing is that from where we are getting our electricity, what is the source? The other issue or the topic what we should talk is for what we are using it, how much we are wasting it. And I think that this is even more important question, because otherwise we can just build newer and new and next power station. But with all this consumption, we are destroying the environment. It is not just a question from where we are getting the energy, but how we are using it.
I would also comment that well, this is very, very true about what you say about Germany. But I think that this call and this pledge now to try and also leave coal is still very kind of upworthy. And thinking about energy consumption, adding to what Mihkel said, it is time that we again inevitably have to start talking about not just how much we consume, and trying to kind of direct our actions by this indicator. We have to start thinking about how much we can produce with the technologies that we have today, and we inevitably have to start more and more taking this into account.
Okay, anyone wants to add something to it?
I would add a question very related to that. How well does Estonia meet Paris Climate Agreement requirements? I would also like to add, if you Google it, there is a very good research done by the Stockholm Environment Institute. It's Tallinn branch by 2 Estonians. So the research or the report is in Estonian, but there is actually it's available online, whether and how Estonia is fulfilling these agreements. So you can read it yourself later, but I'll give it for you to answer as well.
Well, I think the amount of renewable energy that we're right now producing is something around 20 to 30%, somewhere in that ballpark. So definitely a long way to go. But of course, the Paris Agreement is not only about carbon, it's mostly about it. But again, carbon is not only about how we produce our energy, it is also a vast number of other industries. Again, looking at how Estonia is, as mentioned before, one of the really most pristine countries nature-wise today, we have definitely a good place of starting. We have a good starting point, but this needs huge political action and national mobilization. I'd say that, yeah, I'm optimistic, but we need to get on with it.
We must consider that the official policy of Estonia is greenwashing. That we have met the requirements of the climate policies only because of the fact that the benchmark or the reference year of the production of the greenhouse gases is 1990. This means that automatically, because the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Soviet wasting system of the Soviet Union and our independence, we have dropped our energy production twofold, threefold. So, and thanks for the, of course, the EU support to have built better power stations, the filter systems and the cleaning systems are much better. But basically, we haven't done much to meet the requirements of this climate policy requirements, just because things happened. We don't have such industry system anymore as it was in Soviet time, and that's it. And I don't know what the politicians are thinking about the way, if the reference year will be 2015, for example, then we are in trouble.
Slightly different question, but Grete, I recently read, I couldn't find that poll, but there was some sort of survey, a poll conducted, I think was last year, which said that the Estonians are the most skeptical nation in the EU, in the European Union, when it comes to climate change. Are you able to comment on that one?
I'm not familiar with the methods of this study, so how they measured it, what it's meant, how they understood the question. But if it's really, measured in a valid and reliable way, then if you want me to express my opinion, what I think of it, so probably it might be again the same topic. If we notice in the environment the things we are aware of. When we don't know some hidden processes or hidden principles that are existing but out of our sight, it's really difficult to make us to think of it. And so in this pristine nature and a lot of still some forests we have and clean air and so on, it's perceptually really difficult to understand climate change, also related to position in the geographical position. So I think this is it's a primitive thinking of Estonian people which allows us to be skeptical. And today's world we have built with last 100 of years, we have built the world where you can stay alive when you are a stupid person. It's not a problem, and you don't have to understand how the world functions, and you still can cope. And this is example of it.
Joonas, you want to add something on that one?
Well, as Mihkel already said, we are living in the safest place on world, basically. We are seeing little, actually, impacts of climate change. Say what people in Toabolu are experiencing, or what people in Syria are experiencing in South Spain, if we talk about European countries. We don't experience that. Hence, we don't think much about climate change. We feel safe. We see all those catastrophic movies. We see all those documentaries about climate change. But for us, it really doesn't matter. And again, like coming back to the summer, I doubt that any Estonians would say like, no, I don't want this kind of summer. It was a good summer for most Estonians, probably. So climate change doesn't come into mind for people. It's not that they are ignorant, but it's just that they don't really perceive it because of mainly of the dimensional scale of it. The same way I would ask from you that, can you perceive neoliberalism, say? It's something that is so big, so huge, so embedded in our lives every way that actually it becomes part of our normal life.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Grete, you want to add something?
Yes, maybe. Yes, you really inspired me in a way that one thing is that it's abstract and we don't think in abstract way when we don't have knowledge. But the other thing is actually where might be the answer, and the answer is motivation. Some people are motivated to change something in their lifestyles, for example, also here. And we should ask why. And actually we can find motivation, so good quality motivation. There is one way how to rise bad quality of motivation, and this is punishments and incentives. We all know that those work until you apply them. So this is bad quality of motivation, and we have, as a society, we don't like them. And there is two ways of good quality of motivation. One is to affection, so you have deep interest or value given something. For example, some species, you like some species, or you like some areas or landscapes, and you have so deep connection with it that you want to protect it, and then you get aware of what you should do to preserve it. So, and this is vanishing, because when this contact or affection with the environment comes to experiences in environment, and we know that the Estonian children doesn't go into environment, into forests anymore so much, many of them. And in Europe, there is no environment anymore, any natural. And the other good quality motivation is to understanding the meaning of the right behavior via my own perspective. So if you have like educators, or I don't know, people who tell you things via media, and they're able to show how this goal could be your own goal, how this behavior or task might be done your own life goal in some way, how it's related to your own goals, then it works also really extremely well, and we don't really use it. We just say it's important, but we don't search the link how this can be important for you.
Well, now you are inspiring me, and I would just like to add to that you're right. And I think when we talk about climate change, we need to start to talk or tell more positive stories instead of those catastrophic future events that are going to happen with us. We need to talk about those people who have that positive motivation. Maybe we should talk about Põxit in a context how this can bring economical wealth into Estonia, how it can bring scientific development into Estonia. We should maybe talk how Sweden is doing what they are doing. And this should inspire us, this should inspire the younger generation to come out from this situation. Well, maybe not come out, but live with this situation that we have built in the last centuries. For example, the title of your event, Threat. I don't think the climate change is only a threat. It can be so many other things. It can be also opportunity, for example.
And actually, this is mutually inspiring. I mean, and actually, what if people feel guilty because of their behavior, then this is another mild form of controlled motivation, mild form of bad quality motivation. So if we make people feel guilty or threatened or nervous, then they don't buy that thing. So actually giving meaning to the activities without making them feel bad is a key.
I wanted to add that it is clear and present danger for us, that for the humankind, the climate change is not the only single threat for us, but it is a combination of mass extinction, loss of clean water, loss of soils. Everything is going on at the moment, and there is a clear threat for us. And what is the big problem is that we know that for very, very long time, the scientists have known. And in American psychologists, they have described the phenomena pre-stress or pre-traumatic stress syndrome. This means that the stress syndrome, what you are getting, because you see that the things are going very, very bad, very, very, very quickly. And you are talking about this, and you are talking, and then is coming the president like Trump into the power, and you don't have power anymore to fight with this stupidity. And then you feel the pre-traumatic stress syndrome. And this is described syndrome in amongst American scientists, that it is real threat.
Okay, thank you. But we've got questions here.
Hello, Christian from Estonia. So I'm a simple man in my own.
Just a bit louder. Is the mic working? Yeah.
I think so. Christian from Estonia, and I think I'm a simple person from Estonia. So, what should I do? I hear all of that. I have heard that all around the news. So, what is my next step? What I should do? I go tomorrow to work. I do what? I go to supermarket. I do what? How do I make my decisions? I choose I don't Richest of Life or Green Party or somebody who is like for the environment. But every day, how should I react in the society? What I should do?
Questions here as well. So what do? We've known this information for a long time. How should we react? And also maybe connected to that question, how much time do we have before climate change becomes irreversible, or is the time already over?
The last question, the answer for the last question, it is coming from the IPCC report from last autumn that we may have maybe 12, 15 years. What you can do, I'm referred to the Günter Pauli, who was here in Estonia in this summer for giving talks. 2 questions: what you eat and where you shit. That if you eat meat, then you are clearly danger for the planet, and if you are flushing your shit into the water wasting system, what we have the central system, then definitely wasting the energy. And then what you are wearing and so on. So be informed, take actions like this.
And in addition, Christian, you are not a simple person. You are a teacher. I know him. So, but this is not funny actually, because I think the education is one way. Actually, in Estonia, we have a president. We have occasion where values in society were changed to children. It was in 30s. And also it's possible. We have idea that the Estonian teachers actually also should live sustainability, just not give that value or this knowledge to the children, what they don't do at the moment. But there are universities or teacher colleges in the other countries where teachers at schools are taught to live in every moment the sustainability ideas and ideals and ways of living. So actually what teachers can do, they affect children all the time. You have more access to children than we have in university to the students. You have more contact hours, and there are so many possibilities to develop their thinking toward the direction of systematic way of understanding and inhibiting wrong ideas and inhibiting wrong behaviors. So every one of you can go and work as a teachers, for example.
Yeah.
It's not the answer to my question. I totally agree with Grete and I totally agree with Mihkel, but it's not the answer to my question. What I personally can do when tomorrow morning I go to shop, I cannot buy meat. Then I cannot buy any plastic, and then I cannot. And when I try to choose from the supermarket something, and there's everything is plastic and packed and small packed and mega pack, and then it's like I'm like, what? And I'm a teacher, yes, I know about sustainability, yes, I know about that, but then I try to read on the products that where they are produced, and I'm like, shit, I have to go to the class, I have to teach children, I don't have any time. I take this plastic bag and then buy all the shit that I can get. And
Mihkel already said stop eating meat, so that was one very specific thing.
You're posing.
By the way, can I ask that question? If you're brave enough, raise your hands who are meat eaters. So it seems like roughly half, I would say. I personally am as well, so I can raise my hand. And just that reminds me, Mattias, you said before we discussed that event that Estonians on average eat, I think it was 30 kilogram more than the world average. Or was it the European average?
Yeah, it's the world average.
A world average, yeah.
Almost around 80 kilograms.
What do you think is that? Is it because they all believe that, you know, in a climate like that, you need to sort of eat meat to keep you strong or whatever?
Definitely. Sorry?
Because of India, what? Well, it depends in India. Actually, I lived in India. It depends whether you're, yeah.
So again,
they eat so small amount because, like the thing you said, to save the world, don't eat meat. It is, of course, with the same air for land. I take the numbers from like air randomly right now, but the same air of land will feed 10 meat eaters or 100 vegetarians. It's something like this. So these areas, there are a lot of people, they don't eat meat because when they would eat, there could be not so many people, they would die out just.
Okay, but
There's a question here as well, exactly about the same topic. What's your
sorry,
opinion?
but let's. Okay, we're going off the topic. Grete, you want to? Let's just first thing first.
It's the same question,
Yeah, this
basically.
question
Sorry.
from Christian, what we should do. Okay, not in the shop, but I really like this idea. Avelina Helm gave us in this summer in one group of students. And discussion went the same. What should we do in our personal lives, and also what should we do in more general level? Because when we do all good choices in our lives, it might not help a lot. And I really liked how Avelina said that this is one ecologist from Tartu University, really brilliant scientist. She said that the ambition of Estonia could be in the world to be the one nasty little country who pull attention to biodiversity all the time, to put that into our agenda and say that biodiversity is something that we should value. And we have, for example, environments where we still have that kind of biodiversity that is unique in the whole world. And we also might export that biodiversity, those species and those kooslused, how is it? Because communities, yeah, and we can help, for example, Europe also reproduce that kind of areas. And I think this is a wonderful idea. If some political party would say that this is our agenda in the world, then I could vote for them.
Okay, Mattias, you wanted to quickly say something, and then we take the question.
Then we take the question of
okay,
animals.
Questions through Slido, and then we got a question from the audience there.
I could also comment on Christian's wonderful question.
Okay, just quickly then.
Yeah, so well, it was kind of already shouted out here, but I would say the thing that you can do in your everyday life is get involved. So if this topic is already between your ears, then research. Well, you can go to ecofootprintnetwork.com, something like that. Calculate your own eco footprint. You will already get very much information, like where is it coming from, what is it doing, like what power sources are heating your house, what are you eating, how much do you travel, etc. And we start thinking about it, then we can start changing stuff about it.
Okay, thanks. Reelika.
Another question that's not related to climate change per se, but definitely very, very important for all Estonians. Is Estonia chopping down too much of our forest? And are we chopping it down sustainably?
Just quick fact here as well. Apparently, Estonia is the 4th most forested country in Europe. So the question is, why should we worry about cutting down?
Well, yes, we're saying we have more forests now than ever before, but it's a little bit like saying that there is much less cancer than ever before, because we decided to start calling people who were cured of cancer and didn't die for 5 years cancer-free statistically. So we're starting to call all kinds of environments that are not ecologically forest at all, and we're calling them forests. And by these statistics, yes, we have a lot of forest, but the ecological diversity of our forests is definitely under threat. And it's mostly definitely under threat due to over-management and over-logging.
Yeah, definitely we are over-exploiting our forests. This is clear for the ecologists. We are cutting it. It is not sustainable. Also, we must keep in mind that it is not sustainable on the cultural, from the sustainability's cultural part. That there are the holy places of Estonia are not mapped. The pre-Christianity related holy places, they are not mapped, and there are communities who are still actively using these holy places in forest for worshipping and so on. But as officially they are not protected, they are cut it down as well. There are, like in South Estonia, there is a tradition for having this cross ristipuud, cross trees, that if the during the funerals there is cutted across into the trees. That
like the sacred trees, basically, right?
Yeah, they're holding the soul of the people, and then these forests are cut it down. This is for the local communities. It is holy places, and then it is cut it down. And this is clear indication that by the international standards, the forest management system is not sustainable.
So it's very sort of cultural, as you already said, and sort of emotional aspect here. Yeah. Anyone wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Mihkel's point, and again also Mattias' point that yes, we have that the science behind forestry today is not doing really good work. They are categorizing some of the forests under forest that actually isn't really treeless forest that doesn't have the diversity that it used to have, doesn't have any more the animals it used to have, and because of that, for Estonians, forest becomes unknown, strange place. For centuries, a forest has been for Estonians not only a sacred place, but also a place where we escape from oppressors. This is a place where people were escaping from knights. Also, after Soviet Union occupied Estonia, so many Estonians fled to the forest. So the attachment is really strong. And if we are destroying this culture at the moment, then we're also losing the knowledge about the environment and the commitment that we should actually have for any kind of change.
Yeah, not just like sacred trees. This amount of intensity with which we're logging, it is threatening our cultural ties to the forests, which we are, as you said, already alienated enough from. Also, in the very simple way that if we continue at current kind of volumes, then in 10, 20 years, but very soon, there's just not going to be any more cottages in the forest, because the forests are just going to be like patches of trees. So the cultural ramifications of this, Estonia, is known as a nation of forests. And you said that we're the fourth most forested in Europe?
Apparently, the statistic shows that we're fourth or fifth, either way.
So the alienated people who kind of have in their back of their mind, yes, Estonians are forest people. They're totally detached from this reality.
Grete?
This discussion just remind me of one really wonderful experimental study, and actually there are many of that kind of studies. So environmental psychologists have studied the effect or impact of being exposed to the nature, to the way people solve like common dilemmas. Do you know what's common's dilemma? This is the situation when in cooperation with other people, you can preserve some resource over a long period. But when you don't cooperate, but are greedy and try to get a lot of resource at a short time, then everybody will starve. So there are that kind of simulation games. And it's really interesting. Some studies show that if you expose experimental group to the natural environment, then after that, when they start playing that commons dilemma game or simulation, they play in a way that they will survive. So what is affected is their ability to inhibit the will to get more, and they start to make more altruistic and cooperative choices. And in a control group, when they're exposed in some other kind of like city environment, they play in a way most people play. So fast richness and fast dying out. And so it says that nature has a power to protect itself. So when we get rid of the forests, get rid of the possibilities to go out, to go to those places or the sacred places, then we actually might change something else too.
Thank you. But someone has been, thanks. Someone's been waiting the right long time there at the back. We'll take a question from the audience.
It's not really a question.
You can comment as well. It's fine. Or
It's more a comment first, and then maybe it's a question later.
Where are you from as well?
I'm from Estonia.
Estonia, okay.
And I'm doing my final thesis about this topic actually. And I think the answer to the last guy who asked was first, it's not what I can do tomorrow, but what I can do today. So if you go home today, just go online and change your energy bill to renewable energy, and Google what else options there is possible, because or unplug every device that you're not using because they're using residual energy when they're plugged. So that's an easy way to do it. And then tomorrow when you're going shopping, try to focus on local products that are produced in a sustainable way. And I think my question is, since in my research, the most thing I'm struggling and it has come up here is the way to convey this problem in a positive way, because if you really go into it, it's stupidly apocalyptical. So my question is how you give it a positive light.
I have 2 children for whom I'm doing this. That I still have hopes that there is a chance, less than 1%, that we can see Estonia 200 celebration. But still, even it is so small chance that we can survive this big collapse coming in something between 2035 to 2030 to 2050, something like this. There is still hope that if we are talking, look how many people have came here to discuss about this topics, that it is becoming more and more important for people, and together we can change it. It is not something like that. It is everything is gone. No, we can, and if we are working together, if we are collaborating, we can change the world. And there is hope that maybe our children can have almost as good life as we have. There is still some chance, and then it is worth to fight for that.
Neuroscientists know for about, I think, 15 years already that our brain is unbelievably plastic. Our brain is so plastic that it can change in all ages. When I have 94 years old granny who learns daily new things and changes on daily basis because it's interesting, and we all can change so well. And the only thing that keeps back our change in behavior, in thinking, in attitudes, is our inability to believe that we can change. But actually, I work in teacher education. We educate teachers how to understand how the brain develops in children, and we know that it can develop all the time. And so if we create an environment where one can change, it's always possible. So actually, we don't have any big structural barriers to this change. And second, actually, I think this optimistic view is more functional. We have to do anyway something with our lives. Why not to try change that shit?
Yes, really good.
I have a comment as well, actually, to answer your question. Maybe one of the biggest events, or so to say, that the Estonians have made a real impact on the world and around the world. Maybe you've all heard of it. It's the action campaign called Teeme Ära, Let's Do It, where Estonians actually reached most of the countries of the world, I think, excluding North Korea and so on. So that would be something very, very positive that we can be proud of and learn from.
Totally.
Can
I say something positive too?
Yeah, sure.
I think I haven't.
We take questions.
Haven't enough.
2 questions in the audience.
It was. Now I was getting this mixed up. I think it was the Oxford University study, one of the longest studies going that tried to, for I don't know, 70 years or something, measure what is it that makes humans most happy. And they found among completely different age groups and completely different like walks of life that it's people, it's other people, it's close relations, and it's good friends. So I think therein lies what I said also in my presentation. This great challenge that we're facing is an immense opportunity to really unite. And apparently humans are hardwired for empathy. We're hardwired to care about each other. So if we unite, we start caring about each other more. And I don't know.
This is a very good point. Social cohesion is very important. I agree. But let's take questions from audience. We've got one right over there and one hand at the back. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm actually a teacher in Ulamista City, where the Let's Do It Foundation is currently. And my question, I guess, is they're not doing anything in the new city to promote waste management or green energy. So if they're not even doing it where they're at, then how are we progressing the rest of the country?
Which city you're talking about? Sorry.
In Ulamista City, the smart city.
Oh, Ulamista City, smart city. Okay.
Yeah.
They're not doing what? Sorry.
There's no waste management.
Waste management. Okay. I didn't know that. Anyone wants to comment on that?
Yeah. So also in accordance with Christian's question, like what can we do? We can organize. We can get involved. We can start exercising our democratic right to freedom of speech. It's happening all around the world right now, in Brussels and England. And people are coming to the streets. They're organizing and they're demanding. I can't remember which country it was, but someone just sued their government because of not enough action on the climate question. So we can do this. I mean, this is our country.
I think in that smart city, those smart people who are working and living there should really raise up and demand that the waste should be recycled.
Exactly, protests.
Well, obviously, the simple thing, you can start with an email and politely, I would say politely, diplomatically suggest something. And if they don't agree with you, then perhaps, you can write an opinion article in the media or, I'm not joining with the protest yet, but okay.
Rock the boat.
But okay, we got a question right at the back. Yeah, or two. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Teo. I'm from Finland, and I like how this discussion is now developing towards this, what we can really do. And like we all know, we have like 11 years, according to the IPCC report, to do stuff. And these personal choices we have been talking so much about, they will happen so slowly that 11 years will not be enough. So the only way is this global movement of people doing their campaigns. And I think Estonia needs their own campaign for climate as well. This Let's Do It campaign, they are focusing on the rubbish, but you need also, or we here, a campaign for the climate. And here are a lot of people who are able to do this. So why wouldn't we start it now here?
So that's a question for Astonishing team.
Let's sign up at the door on our way out.
Okay. Let's think about that. I mean, what is a specific suggestion? Start exactly what?
So I'm running a campaign in Finland currently, and we have a petition that we urge our politicians to use the EU presidency of Finland this year to place this on the number one priority on the agenda. So the EU would make policies that would aim for the 1.5 degree policies. And we have now maybe 20,000 signatures in the petition. We have the universities all around Finland behind this campaign. The city of Helsinki, the cities of Lahti, many others, the UNICEF, a lot of people, just when we ask them to join this campaign, they will join. So you need just some people to ask the questions. in the public.
I guess the question is, can we unite and start that kind of campaign? Or is this something we haven't already done? Anyone wants to comment on that? Looks like it's a moment for a thought. But while we're thinking, let's take another question right there at the back. He's been waiting for a long time. Yep.
Hi, I'm Mattias. I'm a regular Estonian, but I'm also from the Estonian Green movement. Okay. I was also inspired by Grete and her thoughts about how we can reach school children. But it seems like school children are more often now actually not going to school because they're going on climate strikes. So it's hard to reach them because they already know what to do. The problem is with the adults. And the adults are very busy all the time. Going home, going to work, going to home, going to work. So the question is the same actually, like, how can we reach them? And do you, let's say, what's your thought on civil disobedience, or like stopping the people and making them think?
So, because actually the way you change misconceptions in children work with adults too. So many studies with misconceptions have made with students, which are actually adult people, and the mechanisms are the same. So actually all the campaigns we are doing, we just think it's enough when we provide right information, but it doesn't work like this, because we know how our working memory and how our long-term memory cooperate when new information comes in. Usually our working memory goes into our old knowledge, which might be wrong, very wrong. For example, nothing depends on me or something. And we bring that up, although you are giving the new information, and then we relearn our old conceptions. For example, this is one, and we know we have studied and tried already in the scientific community many ways how to change, how to give the good message. And I think this previous one who talks, I really like that the message. I think we just have to do that kind of interventions and campaigns in a smart way, because other directions from psychology also say that it's possible to make smart interventions that are like lightweight, they are small, but they're psychologically very precise. So actually from social scientists might come good solutions too, how to change the thinking of adults.
Okay. Yeah, you want to add something, Mihkel?
I thought that what have happened over the last year, where people have joined to fight for better environment. A year ago we had the forest walk. Then in spring we had get together about cellulosis factory in Tartu, where people joined. Some thousands of people came.
Pulp mill in English. It's
pulp mill. Yeah. And we have the Eesti Metsa Abiks pro-Estonian forest movement, which includes some thousands of people. I think that it's 8,000. But for climate, I think that it would be extremely hard to get people on the streets. That it is extremely hard to get people anyway onto the streets, even if it's so unfair conditions what we have. But still, Estonians, it's somehow it is not our policy,
but we even got the people on streets for women. Why not?
That's right. I forgot this. I was on office on work at that day. That yes.
Generally, yeah. For those people who've just come to Estonia, Estonians are not really it's not in the national character to go on the street. Very rarely that we have those protests, and then usually, they don't involve more than 1,000 people or so. I don't remember there being more than that. So it's not a kind of Paris-style nation, So Estonians are a bit reserved when it comes to going on the street, but that's that. Any more audience questions, comments? Or we take from Slido, Reelika? We got something on Slido?
We have one from the audience as well, or two.
One. I'm Alexander, I'm from Ukraine, and I heard from one of the speakers that in Europe, the problem of refugees is more significant than the climate problem. However, let me remind you that the climate change caused the fall of the Roman Empire due to the barbarian invasion, is the first one. The second statement is medieval climate optimum caused the great geographical explorations, which changed the political structure of the world like, significantly. So my question is kind of strange, but how Europe and Estonia particularly could utilize the climate changing in a political perspective? So that's my question.
Yeah, I mentioned it in my talk that the biggest threats what Estonia sees is the political threats. That's it's inevitable that there will be refugees and that millions of refugees are coming in near future because just that fact that the sea level of the oceans is rising and the people doesn't have place to live because most of the population of humans is living on near the coast. So there is enormous big problems are rising with this issue, and at the moment I don't know what would be the best solution. My personal opinion is that it is much cheaper and safer to solve these issues where they are happening, so that to help these refugees as close to their homes as possible. But of course we have different political opinions on here, and the elections are showing which idea is winning on here. But it is clearly very big threat.
Well, and when we talk about refugees, we always think about maybe Syria these days, people coming from Sahara, Africa. But because of the climate change, we are also starting to see in the future more refugees or migration within Western societies itself. South Spain today is desertificating. When I was doing my master's in University of Kent in England, Spain's from southern Spain were buying land in there to bring all their grape farms into England. Are we maybe seeing in the future also that Southern Europeans are coming here to Estonia where the climate is becoming more milder, more suitable for them? I'm sure we are going to see that, and this is one thing that we definitely have to touch on.
The land grabbing, what is have started already in Estonia also, that the foreigners are buying agricultural land because it will be extremely profitable here to produce food here, because this is one of the fewest places where in Europe it can be done.
Mm-hmm. And this is just like what I was talking about, the potato fields, what's happening today. Big corporations are buying the land, or Chinese maybe going around the world buying all the suitable land for their future agriculture products.
About refugees, I'm not going to formulate a concrete point of view here, but I do not think that Estonia stands a lot of chance if we try to in the near future completely isolate ourselves from geopolitics or global politics. I think our big chance is to really press the button of let's try to work together and let's try to solve these questions kind of in unison, because I don't think we stand a chance against like the millions of hordes. I mean, we don't have Trump. No one's gonna build a wall here.
Okay, there was another question in the audience. Yeah, over there.
I'm Estonian. I just, as we're talking about practical steps, and there are so many teachers here, I was just wondering if you've ever tried this campaign that you are telling your school children that they will come to school by public transport and somehow persuade their parents not to use the car one day a week because public transport is free and all the cars are standing in a jam. Have you tried it? But that is a practical thing, because there aren't very many countries in the world where public transport is free.
Well, the problem is that the public transport doesn't reach to everyone, and lots of people, even in urban settings, they don't have that opportunity to actually reach that public transport. And for lots of parents, maybe public transport is a question of safety. It's for them maybe safer to take their kids by car to school, so on. But it's definitely a question we should.
It's a different topic.
Excuses.
we discussed that during the actually last year we had about Tallinn, how to make Tallinn great again, and we discussed the public transport. And indeed, you're right, it doesn't actually reach to some of the suburbs, or not frequently enough. You know, if you get one bus per hour, it's not really helpful. So you are absolutely right. So you know, Tallinn's mayor and Tallinn city government likes to post about it, but it's not actually the case always. But that's that. I don't want to go too political.
I just wanted to say that actually we are how public transport is organized. We give the order. We order it. It's not like somebody put it on us. This is our choice, that we don't prefer those people who prefer as a city government to develop it in a wise way. So actually, and then we are sitting like, I don't know, kuidas öelda, alluvad, employees. We cannot do anything because our bosses are so stupid. They have always been. It's not democracy. This is our choice to demand normal facilities, for example, public transport. And it's never, and the cycling as well, it's never too comfortable, but it can be made more comfortable. And we know countries where the weather is more, it's worse than here, and it's possible to ride a bike and the public transport.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, another question for the audience at the back there.
Yes, hello. Okay, I'm also Estonian, but I have a little bit different question, and I'm even wondering that nobody has even asked this kind of question. Short question is, what's the point of this? And the long question is that, look, we're Estonia. We are only 1 million people, and I personally have nothing against going all the green. For example, okay, let's shut down this oil shale power plant. Let's go all green and so on. But still, this footprint is just so small compared to other world big leaders like US, China, Russia. I mean, if we are the only country that is green and nobody cares, they're like, oh, they're just a bunch of tree huggers right there in Estonia. We don't care about them. So how can we actually make some kind of impact? For example, okay, as I said, there's just so few of us, and if all of us are going green, it's just so small of an actual impact in the world. So why should we do it?
It is very good question.
Maybe you didn't read the event description, actually.
It is very, very typical question, and leads to the misconceptions what Grete told us. Our ecological footprint is way bigger than American footprint per capita. Our Estonians footprint is it is one of the third footprint or something like this in the world because of our oil shale industry. And we can make difference. It is not fair to blame that, look what the Chinese people or Bangladesh people or what they are doing there, that they are polluting the sea and so on. They produce the stuff what we buy, and we like to buy cheap stuff and a lot. They're producing these for us. And our ecological footprint is there, not only in Estonia, not only because of the oil shale industry. Our choices are what generates our ecological footprint. And we can make difference. We can be example. And if we are making us greener, then we can ask the other countries to say that, look, we have cleaned up our courtyard. Now it is your turn. Why you are wasting that? This is a common boat where we are sitting. But we can't do it before we have cleaned up ourselves.
And there is also one very common bias. We think that, or many people think that from my actions, nothing depends. So when I make sustainable choice, nothing gets better. But actually we know that it doesn't work another way around. We can do as individuals and as a group a lot of harm. And this has been done already. And then when this harm happened to the climate and to the biodiversity and so on, with all our choices, then these choices of one person, they made difference. So how it doesn't work other way around? I wonder why we think that we cannot make positive change with on individual level.
I'd like to say that environmental philosopher called Calicut has said that there is no survival value in pessimism. So I think the question imposed is kind of skewed from the beginning because, like I said also in my presentation, the time for debating over who is more to blame is over, because it does not matter who is to blame. So if all of these other countries are looking away and polluting more, then this is reason for us to work even harder, because the question is not who has the best ecological country image. The question is, are we going to survive this crisis as a humanity or not?
I wanted to bring up, it just came into my mind, one positive example that what we can do if we are doing it together is when I was young, and up until the 90s, when I was still young, was the biggest threat or one of the biggest issue what everybody talked was ozone layer depletion. And at the moment, we can say that we have solved this problem, that there is no big threat anymore from the ozone layer depletion. And it only needed agreement of the industrial countries not to produce anymore these freons and the gases which were caused this issue. If we are looking that in Paris, the countries were still ready to negotiate and get into the common agreement, at least from something, I think that there is a very big hope that we can do something. We still talk, we still can make the agreements, and there is still hope that never lose the sight that everything is possible.
Thank you. So last question, talking about future. Let's imagine Estonia in, I don't know, let's say 2030, through your perspective. And let me just do a quick quote as well. A young Estonian student went to Paris climate conference, it was 2 or 3 years ago, right? And he wrote an article for Estonian World, and I quote him: "The driver's seat to the 21st century green economy is empty, and Estonia could make a good candidate to fill in that seat." Do you think that could ever happen? Let's be positive and imagine Estonia now 15 years down the line, or 20 years.
I absolutely think that it can happen.
Anything else?
I see, like Grete mentioned, there are actually no barriers that are not possible to go past that could really stop us. The only thing that we need is motivation and ambition to realize that the direction that we should be moving toward collectively is the same, and just start getting on with it.
Grete?
We have made in history at least twice an incredible thing. We had made our own republic. And I think the next big challenge would be to keep it livable. And it's so small country, it's so easy to make great changes here. Compared to like Germany or France, it's so difficult to make fundamental changes, but it's so easy in Estonia. Everybody knows everybody. We just should talk and discuss and have evidence-based knowledge.
Okay, that's the last word. Thank you very much, Joonas, Grete, Mihkel, and Mattias. And thank you for asking. And sorry if any of you had more questions. We'll perhaps discuss the topic again. Astonishing Evenings will continue next month, 18th of February. And that will be a political debate, because we will have election on 3rd of March. So we'll invite representatives of different parties. But I would like to invite here our team as well, Relika, Nele, and where's Lene? Our astonishing team. So just who we are. So this is it. It's not government operation, all just for private individuals, and that's how we do it. But anyway, are we going somewhere as well? Pudel Bar, right? So if any of you wants to join with us, we will be at the Pudel Bar. I know it's late and tomorrow is a working day, but we will be there. So thank you again for coming. And if you want to follow us on Facebook, it's Facebook, Estonishing Evenings on Facebook, obviously. And few words about our sponsors as well. We have to say thank you for Telliskivi Creative City, because they are supporting this event, and Estonian World as a media partner. Those who don't know Estonian World, it's estonianworld.com, and you can read in English about Estonia. Thank you again. Good night.